There's an inconsistency in what I see in boxing training for many years now in how certain things are taught and then how they are used in the ring and in sparring and so on. Now, this inconsistency is one of the things that many combat sports practitioners claim is an issue with traditional martial arts, and in many cases, rightfully so, in that the training methodologies are just something that doesn't work in real life. The forms, the kata, all those kind of things, it's useless stuff, and so on. That is the claim. I don't entirely disagree. I think there's some validity there as well, but that's for a different video. But the point I want to make is that, well, we have similar things in boxing as well. And before everybody gets upset with me about this, I love boxing. I have for decades. When I was even a little boy, I loved boxing. I wrote Boxing for Self-Defense out of my love for boxing, which is one of my best-selling books. So it's not like I have anything against the noble art. It's just that we have to be realistic. And I'll give you the explanation in a bit. But the point is that when you claim that, well, martial arts is nonsense because of all the ways that they train that are not realistic, and then you have something similar in your own style, you should take a minute to think about that and maybe look at everything else that you're doing. What am I talking about? The lead hook. How is the lead hook often taught to this day? And I have seen this happen for, again, decades on end. You start in a traditional left lead, and then either they throw it immediately from there, or they show it after throwing a right hand punch, for instance, a right straight, and then you have to follow up with the left lead hook. Okay, what do they show? You throw the right straight punch, and then you totally rotate towards your right, transfer your weight on your right leg, pivot on the ball of the lead foot so that your entire leg turns inward. And if I'm facing 12 o'clock, your heel is pointing towards 9 o'clock, and that's how you power that lead hook. You can find example after example of high-level boxing coaches showing exactly that all over YouTube and social media. You will find, and to this day, I see coaches in boxing, but also in kickboxing, MMA, and so on, show the lead hook exactly like that. This is how they teach it. Now, the inconsistency that I see is that I have yet to find any boxing champion, even if it's not a boxing champion, a professional boxer who's at a good level, consistently throw his lead hook that way. I've asked this question to many boxing fans, practitioners, and coaches, and I've never really had a satisfactory answer. And it always comes back to, well, the this and that and blah, blah, blah. And then people start talking about the check hook, and I'm like, okay, I get that. But that is the exception. You don't go into a boxing match throwing nothing but check hooks. You might do it in MMA if you're Luke Rockhold and get knocked out because of it. But that's a joke, by the way, but it's a little bit true as well. But the point is that the check hook is not the standard how you learn to throw a hook. And it's not how you use a lead hook in boxing as a standard as well. It's more the exception than it is the rule. So going back to the basic fundamental way of how do you learn a lead hook, it is more often than not, in my experience and what I've seen, and I'm sure somebody does it differently. I know I teach it differently to my MMA guys, but what you literally almost always see is this full weight transfer onto the right leg, full rotation of the body towards the right, throwing the hook as you pivot on the ball of the foot, of the lead foot, and totally rotate that lead leg inwards 90 degrees to the right. So again, the knee points to the right, the heel points to the left, full rotation. And then they talk about, throwing the hook with power from the hips, from the torque, blah, 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 and so on. I don't disagree with that. I'm not saying it's not true. What I am saying is, why don't you see the lead hook being thrown like that consistently in every single fight professional boxers do? Pick any champion. You can pick Sugar Ray from back in the day. You can go back to Jack Dempsey if you like. You can look at Mike Tyson. You can look at young guys like Ryan Garcia. Pick whatever weight class. Pick whatever era in boxing. But just pick, like, let's say, top 5 boxers of each year in different weight classes. Look at all their left hooks. Lead hooks, I should say, because some of them will be southpaw. Okay, look at all the lead hooks they throw. How often do you see that full weight transfer, full pivot on the lead leg? How often do you see it? I would be amazed if you even get to 5%. And again, not talking about the check hook. Leave that aside. Leave specialty techniques. Leave that aside. Only the standard lead hook, how it is taught. You're not going to find it. Why? Why is that? That is an example of inconsistencies in thinking about combat sports, traditional martial arts, self-defense systems, and so on. Is that you see the issue in another sport, but you don't see it in your own. You see an issue in another system or art, but you don't see the same flaw, if you want to call it that, in your own. And that is what I think is a big issue in the divide between traditional martial arts in general, self-defense systems, and combat sports, is that this maybe it's a lack of critical thinking. I don't know what we should call it, but it's just that the inconsistency is right there in the open to see. Why do coaches still teach it that way? Well, they learned it that way. I for sure learned it that way, and I see coaches repeat it over and over and over. And this brings me back to an example. I used to work for a really big fitness company, and I would go to gyms and organizations and companies to train people to work with their equipment. And once, a few years ago, I went to the national soccer champion here in Belgium, and I'm going to say which one it is because I don't want to put somebody on blast. But they had bought equipment, and there was the physical trainer who was pretty much the only guy there who had a degree in physical training, and we were talking. He was complaining a little bit because he said that the professional soccer players, they didn't want to listen to him. And one example was that there was this huge weight, and it must have been, I don't know, 70-pound dumbbell or something like that, like really big and heavy. And I asked him, like, what do you do with that? And I said, I don't use it. I'll never use it. They don't need that. But one of the players saw it at another, I think it was an English Premier League soccer club. And I said, they have that, so we need that too. And the trainer said, we're not gonna use that. It doesn't. There's no point. Yeah, but I want it. Player went to complain with the head coach and so on. He got that dumbbell. They used it a few times, and now it's just gathering dust there. And the issue that he explained to me, and that I've seen consistently throughout every sport, basically, is that he said, look, who are the head coaches here? They're usually former soccer players themselves. What do they teach? Well, what they learned. And what they learned is they learned from their coaches who used to be also players and so on. So a lot of the training methodologies were ancient by the time, that they get to the current crop of trainers, let alone what they will pass on to the players who are on the field today. So a lot of stuff get carried forward throughout the decades that is just basically either useless, counterproductive, or absolutely not supported by science. And I've seen that in many, many, many sports, and this includes the boxing that we love so much. Does that mean you have to throw everything out that is in traditional boxing curriculum? Of course not. That's not the point. But if you, like me, love boxing and train in it, or other combat sports in which they throw the lead hook in a similar fashion, if that's you, and you complain and say that traditional martial arts is nonsense because they have unrealistic training methods, then I'm like, okay, well, as effective as I think boxing is, there are still some artifacts in there that are inconsistent with, what is being done when you actually spar for real, or when you're actually in the ring or in the cage or whatever, having an actual fight. Addressing that, I think, is key. Once you do that, we can get to a point of, well, why do they teach it that way? And there are valid reasons why you teach somebody how to do a proper weight transfer to generate power. There are valid reasons for that. But then you should add in your video, or which you put online, or in your explanation, like, look, this is for training purposes. This is not how you throw a lead hook in a fight, on average, in general, and so on. This is how you learn it, which is something that I've been doing for many decades. My students know, my MMA students know about my training drills, the basic drills we do. They're there for a reason. You don't fight with the basic drills. You learn things with the basic drills. Same thing, you can learn how to throw a lead hook with the weight transfer and pivot on the ball of the lead foot, but you're not going to throw it exactly like that, not even close. Look at Roy Jones Jr. I mean, he would throw a lead hook like other people throw a jab. Look at how many times he did a full pivot, like I just explained, pivoting his lead foot all the way and transferring weight and so on. How many times did he do that? Hardly ever. Now, if you say like, well, he did a very simplified, contracted, small version of that, then yes, I will agree with that might be something he's doing, that is very similar mechanics, but that's not what's being taught. That's not what's being explained as this is, you learn it like this in an exaggerated movement, so you get to that in which you can do it in a very small and detailed and much quicker fashion. That's not what's being taught. Anyway, that was, didn't want to turn this into a rant, but this is like some of the things that I consistently have discussions with people about. They look from their point of view, their paradigm of combat sports at what happens in other arts that they don't practice. Me training both in combat sports, traditional sports, self-defense systems, and so on for many, many years, I look at them as separate things. They're different things. They all have their value. They all have their issues and limitations, which is fine. But at least be consistent. Let's try to be consistent. I think that's something we should all strive for. And then if you can do that, I think your own training will get better as much as you can possibly make it. All right, that's it, guys. Take care. Bye.